Hi guys, so welcome back. I'm gonna talk to you guys kind of briefly, not too long, because I'm getting ready to leave my internship site. I'm actually at work right now, taking a break from the clients, and I figured I'd talk to you guys about this issue that has recently made news headlines about Donald Trump cutting food stamps. And I think there's such an uproar about it because, when you think about the numbers of people, the demographic of people who actually use food stamps, who benefit from the SNAP program, it's a lot of African American people who are impacted. Not just, of course, African Americans. We know that other people, other races of people benefit from food stamps. We're not the only one on food stamps, but the reality and the numbers are striking. I don't know if you guys actually done any research on this to see how many African Americans are living on food stamps in America. Like, it can be quite alarming. So I've done some research myself, and I've found that to me, it's quite sad to see that 1 in 3 food stamp households. So that means when you look at the number of households, number of households who are actually using food stamps, who benefit from the SNAP program, 1 in 3 of those households is African American. And we're talking about 33% of households that benefit from this program are African American. That is a huge number. That's over $10 billion per year that is issued to African Americans for food. This is food. People, you need food to survive. There's no other way around it, right? So when we have a situation where we have a significant portion of the U.S. population, and within the African American population, a significant portion, a high proportionate amount of African Americans are on food stamps. That means, like I said, 1 out of every 3 households headed by an African American on food stamps. Nearly 9 million African Americans receive food stamps each month. This number represents 1/4 of the African American population. So 1 out of every 4 African American households is on food stamps. That's a lot of people, you guys. A lot of people are on food stamps. It's crazy. A typical African American family on the food stamp program has income, not including food stamps, at 56% of the poverty line. For a family of 3, 56% of the poverty line corresponds to a monthly income of $775. That is low, you guys, or an annual income of $9,300. So yeah, I think on the surface it may seem like African Americans, we doing well, we balling, a lot of us, of course, are gainfully employed, who have mortgages, who have well-paying jobs, and who have a family, who purchase, like I say, who purchase homes, who have cars, who are dressed nice, who can afford Gucci and Prada and Louis Vuitton and all of the high name brand expensive, designers and stuff like that. It's a lot of us that can, somehow afford that, but it's still a significant amount of African Americans who can't afford it, who are living at or below the poverty line. So there was this headline that's been kind of circulating around social media that says that Donald Trump has his plan to cut food stamps. He wants to reduce the amount of money paid out to people. This is not just African Americans, although I think a lot of African Americans are giving him a lot of backlash about it because they're like, how the hell are we going to survive? If you're going to cut our food stamps, you're going to cut off our food supply, how are we going to survive? And to me, I think it's alarming. Dante says, what percentage is not out here working and think the government is a career? I mean, there goes another issue. I think that when we talk about government assistance, we talk about government aid, food stamps. I think, of course, you're going to have two sides to the coin. You have people that think that, the program is awesome, it's great, we need the program, don't cut it. You have people that are like, all right, these people need to get off their butts and go get a job. They need to go work and find a way, like everybody else, to not only pay their bills, but to buy food, to be able to afford the basic necessities of life. Food being at the top. Food is like the number one necessity of life. You can survive without a house. You cannot survive without food. That's just the reality of the matter. So this is a big issue here. More than 1 in 5 African American households and more than 1 in 4 African American families with children have difficulty affording adequate food. This is almost 3 times the share for white non-Hispanic households. I mean, we're talking about major disparities, major racial disparities between African Americans versus the rest of the population in terms of utilizing this food program we call SNAP. And I think, to me, I mean, it's sad, because I know people who are on, food stamps, and that's just how they survive. And they get benefits, they call it, welfare. They get benefits, from the government to be able to afford to stay where they live. Outside of the assistance from the government, they would not be able to afford, living in an apartment, the apartment that they have, because they get vouchers, through the government to be able to afford these things, So, on one hand, you got people saying, all right, just go to work, stop using the government as a career, like Dante said, in the comment below. And then you got people that are like, we need this. How else are we going to be able to survive? We're doing the best we can, You have people that, I'm talking about African Americans. Most of my audience is African American, so I use, the term a lot here. And you have African Americans who are doing the best that they can. Like they go to work, and the ones that, let's say they're unemployed, they don't have work, they don't have jobs, but they are seeking a job, they're doing their best trying to secure employment. They can't seem to find, gainful employment. So they have to work what they have. They have little to no income. So they go out, and instead of saying, all right, I'm going to be a bum, or I'm going to be just robbing people and breaking into people's homes, they say, all right, let me try to follow the law. Let me try to do things the right way and go out and seek help. Go out and seek help from an agency. The number one agency, they got all the money, which is the government. They're number one. They're not the only one, but they are at the top of the list because they have most of the funding. And then under the government, we have private organizations that have funding, that get funding through the government to assist people who need help. And they're like, I'm gonna just go out and try to seek help and ask for help, because they know they can't do it by themselves. They're looking at the bills that they have to pay, and they're just like, I need assistance, So, I mean, who are we to say that they're wrong for going out to seek assistance? Because if you need help, you need help. It don't matter if you're white, you black, you Hispanic, it don't matter. I feel like it's dumb to sit back and say, oh, I'm going to take care of this by myself, knowing good and well you can't. So I think it's better to go out and seek help, especially when you've exhausted all other resources. I would say first try to reach out to family, when you need help in those kinds of situations, when you need help with food or housing, because that's what family is for. It's supposed to be for. Dante says, yeah, but people abusing the system keep having kids and say, forget working and let the government take care of them. Not cool. That is one perspective. Like I say, this topic is divided right down the middle. You got people on one side, you got people on the other side. And then I guess you got people that really just don't give a fuck, because they feel that it doesn't impact them either way. But I do think there are two main positions to this topic. And I mean, you have the working class African Americans who have made it somehow to middle class and even upper class figure that, okay, if we can do it, if I have a job where I'm making, let's throw a number out there, 50 grand a year, 60 grand a year. Most of you guys probably live in the Southeast, so 50, 60 grand a year is, it's okay, right? You can kind of make it. Definitely can't make it off 50 grand a year living in New York or definitely in living in LA. That ain't gonna cut it. That's like pretty much living at the poverty line. That's just not enough money. And especially if you have kids, that's just not enough money. But in the South, you living in Florida. I mean, I was born and raised in Florida. You can make it off of 50 grand a year, especially as an individual. You have these people that have these jobs that have been working their jobs, by society standards, they are successful. And they're like, if I'm able to work and keep a job and pay my bills, why can't these people who are on welfare? But I think the problem goes way deeper than that. I think on the surface, on the outside looking in, you have people that would say, like it looks like these people are lazy, from the outside looking like they don't want to work, they're just laying up making babies. But I like to look at it from many different perspectives at the same time. So you take an issue such as poverty and you put it in the context of being, you put it in the context of looking at adaptation to one's environment and from an ecological perspective, where you're looking at how people come to reproduce, and just an evolutionary standpoint of view. From an evolutionary standpoint of view, just remove the whole idea of the context we live in a society where that says that, oh, you should have X number of dollars in order to reproduce, in order to have kids. You should have this amount of money. Because I think it gets really complicated when you take the American system and then try to conceptualize, I guess, basic human needs, right? Because I think we all have a human need, and from an evolutionary standpoint of view, from an ecological standpoint of view, we all have this desire to reproduce. That's just, it's nature, it's natural, right? It's something that you are born with. It's not something that, I mean, of course, you can be socialized and taught this, but you don't have to be. It's something that it comes with the package, right? Like as human beings, that's just who we are. We're designed to reproduce, to procreate, to have kids. So if you take that need in and of itself, remove all the stipulations that society says that you should do and how you should be. But if you just take that one stipulation, the fact that as a human being, you have an innate desire to reproduce, I think that's where the foundation lies. I think that is the main driving force for why you see so many poor people who having all these kids, but they're on welfare. They keep having more kids, but they're on welfare. Because I feel like it's just an innate desire. You can't wrestle with nature. You can't defeat nature. It's very hard to say, okay, we're going to try to trump nature. Nature is stronger than any other force. You get what I'm saying? You can't play with nature. So if it's in a person's nature to procreate, if it's in a woman's nature, a man and a woman's nature to come together and to reproduce, it don't matter how much socialization, how much training, parenting classes, prevention classes. I feel like it doesn't matter how much, you've been conditioned and socialized to say that, okay, you should not be reproducing because you don't have the economic means, the financial means to support another life, even your own life, let alone a life outside of yours. I feel like that doesn't matter. Innately within ourselves, people are just living, they're human beings and they're just existing. And that's a part of the human existence to procreate, whether you have money or the means to take care of your kids or not. Now, I think this is where the issue gets complicated, is that when you have this innate desire to procreate, it's almost as if when you were born, when we are created, like God put something in us and says, this is what you're going to do. You're going to have kids. You're going to procreate. And it's like that becomes your purpose in life. Not to say it's your ultimate purpose, but I think that it is an important purpose in life, because if it wasn't, you as a black person looking at you wouldn't even be able to look at me now if that was the case. Because think about what we've gone through as African Americans, all the shit we've gone through. We've been through a lot. Slavery, just looking at the Africans coming to America and the shit that they've been through. If we were to take the approach to say, well, we're going to look at our surroundings and look at society and what society says and try to fit that within who we are as a human being, it doesn't match up. So society says, leave it up to society, black people wouldn't even be here. We would not be in America right now. We would not even exist. So the fact that African Americans continue to fight through all of that, despite the fact that they don't want us here, they don't even want us alive, apparently. Think about it. There are systems set in place. It's different ways you can look at this issue. You can look at like, okay, yes, put the blame on black people and say black people are lazy, they don't want to work, da 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 da. Or you can look at it from more of a sophisticated perspective to look at all the different mechanisms that are at play that have contributed to this social issue of why there are so many African Americans living in poverty. Why are we at the bottom? Are we at the bottom of this totem pole? In terms of socioeconomic status, because we're lazy? Are African Americans really that lazy? Or are there certain other mechanisms that come into play that are at work here? Because I would like to believe that it goes deeper than, just an individual problem and looking at an individual and say, oh, you're just a lazy individual. It goes deeper than that. And we know, just look at history. I feel like to blame an individual is to turn a blind eye to the truth. To say we're going to ignore history. We're going to ignore all of this that's going on. The discrimination and racism. We know that they still are alive and well. Racism, discrimination in our country is still alive and well. So let's not make it seem as though, black people, we got all these opportunities and we just letting opportunities just pass us by for the ones who are unemployed, living in poverty. I don't think that's the case. I think the issue is so complicated. It's a combination. It's a combination of societal forces that are at play that are beyond black people control. Yes, we can march, we can protest, and there's NAACP. But when we're talking about a system that's hundreds of years old, and we're trying to undo and change the system for how it is, that's going to take more than just marching and protesting and creating an organization called NAACP to implement affirmative action. It's going to take a lot more than that. Dante says, okay, I thought you said something else. Okay, so yeah, I agree with you, Dante, to a certain extent, but I want to say that let's not ignore the social forces that are at play, the things that are beyond individuals' control. Dante says, reproduce is cool, but to have a lot of kids and watch them eat good and talk on free cell phones is not cool when the rest of us is out here busting our ass, paying taxes, and watching them just think life. Hold on. It's easy, not cool, just my opinion. I think the issue gets really complicated. I think on the surface it may seem as though African Americans are just taking welfare money and just wasting it. But I don't think that's the case, to be honest with you. I don't think that's the case. I think that's the way it seems, but I don't think that's the case. And I'm not even on welfare, by the way, but I can understand this issue because I wasn't born into riches and wealth. Like I was born to two working parents, that's what I've been exposed to. So that's all I know, is to work and to try to just work hard and do what you're supposed to do to survive. But the whole aspect of, black people just kind of sitting by and riding the system, I do think that may be true to a certain extent. I think that you have African Americans that may have just have given up, you know? They've saying that, okay, well, looking at historically how blacks have been treated when it came to basically trying to integrate with society, because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about integration. We're talking about taking a group of people who were stolen from their homeland, forced into labor, treated less than human beings. We pretty much built America. Go back and history. I think a lot of us sometimes we need a history lesson. We need a reminder of how we came to be in America. And I think a lot of people say, "Oh, well, that was then. This is now. Things have changed. Stop living in the past." You living in the past. That's the reason why black people ain't never gonna have shit because you keep bringing up the past. You just get over the past and look into the future and think optimistically, then we'll have more. That's one perspective, but I don't know how effective that is in terms of bringing about change, especially for the African American community when it comes to, economically. I don't think that is going to just saying, forget the past. I don't think that's really that effective. I think that we should remember the past so that we can put things into perspective, into the right perspective, because I think it's, like I said, I think it is a composition of a lot of different factors. I think that you have African Americans who have, they've pretty much given up. There's like, I'm tired. Black people are tired and they're just like, they have this presumption that what's the point? What's the point in going out looking for a job? What's the point? They're not gonna hire your black ass anyway. This is the kind of narrative that you hear amongst African Americans. How do I know? Because I'm African American. I be around my own people, so I know. You got black people that be like, just forget about it. I don't want to look for no job. I ain't got time. They ain't gonna hire my black ass. They don't want me working. And even if they do, then they gonna want me to change who I am. I gotta cut my dreads. I gotta talk a certain way. I gotta talk, white. I gotta talk proper. I gotta lose my country accent. They feel like they have to basically transform and become a totally different person just to get a job. Now that I don't agree with. We can go back and forth out down this topic, you guys. I really don't have time to do it right now. I actually got about 30 more minutes, so I got 30 minutes to talk to you guys. I feel like this topic, we need to really address this in detail. But like I said, I think in doing so, they call it professionalism, right? They call it, oh, well, if you adapt to this the work environment that the white people have created, then you're becoming a professional. You're professional. Anything outside of that is unprofessional. I disagree with that. Because I've been through the system myself enough to know what it's like, with degrees trying to get a job. So that's one thing. I want to read some of you guys' comments. Dante, doesn't matter what color folks are in the system. Right. So we're not just talking about African Americans, being on welfare. Although within our demographic just speaks loud. When you look at the statistics, African Americans, we just at the top when it comes to poverty and welfare and getting food stamp assistance. We're number one. Our race is at the top when it comes to utilization of those services, So, it's no question that yes, we need those services. Otherwise, how else would we be able to survive? People say, okay, well, just go get a job, or better yet, create a job, right? Better yet, create a job. But if let's go with that, right? Let's go with black people on welfare. They don't need it. They could just go out there and hustle and make their own money. True enough. But even with being a black business owner, let's just keep it real. And black business owners, please comment below. I know some of y'all, have had some success with your businesses, including myself, as a business owner. But I'm sure let's keep it real. A lot of y'all can speak to the reality of the matter that it's not that always that easy. First of all, it's not easy for anybody, white or black, starting a business and getting customers. But we cannot ignore the fact that when it comes to support within the black community, you know, it's not easy for a black business owner to get support. Unless you're selling drugs or you selling some pussy or some illegal shit, it's not easy getting support, within our own community. If you have a product or a service that you're trying to sell, so it's not that easy. People need food right now. To tell a person go start a business, okay, yeah, that could be a good plan to put into place long term. So we're talking about 6 to 12 months. They may be able to see a profit, a return on their investment. 6 to 12 months. For some businesses, you might not see a profit until, 1 or 2 years in. Black people poor people don't have time, that amount of time to wait. You get what I'm saying? To try to get food. They need food right now. People got to eat today. You got to eat lunch and dinner, wake up and eat breakfast. You need food right now. What can we do right now to help people? I'm just starting out and I already see how difficult it is. Yes, because Shunda says that she just started a business and you see, like, especially when you just start, like you fresh, you just step your foot fresh into the game. It is hard. It's hard getting customers. It's hard getting buy-in, getting people to value your product. You can have a very valuable product, but sometimes it's the face of that product because you have a black face. People see the color of your skin and they like, nah, And yes, this is stereotypes, but stereotypes are real. It's like people really do believe stereotypes. They do. And so it just makes it difficult, for black people to rise because of racism and discrimination. It's not to say we can't rise, not to say we can't, become millionaires, because we have a lot of examples of black people who have fought through poverty. They done broke through that ceiling, baby, and they going up, and they keep going up that ladder, and they rising. So let's not ignore those black people either. But let's not forget the millions, and we talk about millions of African Americans. Let's say nearly 9 million African Americans receive food stamps every month. 9 million African Americans receive food stamps every single month. That is a lot of people. 1/4 of the African American population is on food stamps. That's a lot of people. And you can't say, I think that it's easy for black people or people in general to say, oh, they just, they riding the system out. They just using the system. They don't need those food stamps. They just using the system. Come on. Who the hell would go through all that paperwork that you got to submit? Go through all that just for fun. If you didn't need it, trust and believe. If a person don't need it, you're not going to go through all that. It's not even worth the time to apply. You get what I'm saying? Because a lot of times the amount that they give you per month, it's barely just enough. And sometimes it ain't even that. Okay, so let me catch up with some of these comments. William says, so how do you feel about the Austin, Texas stuff that's been happening? Please update me on that. I'm not hip to everything that's going on in the United States. I am, aware of some things that are going on, but not everything, because you guys know I'm a busy person. I'm in my second year of a PhD program, so I have my hands full. I can keep up with just enough. So please update me, and excuse me for not knowing what you're talking about. Update me on the issue that's happening in Austin, Texas. Dante says, I started my truck business a year ago. It's hard starting out. It is hard, and then especially if your target audience is African Americans, I think for me, I can speak for myself because I do own a nonprofit organization called UBAWA, which stands for Urban Books, Authors, and Writers of America. It's a literary organization that I created to just give back to the community, really targeted towards African American authors, self-published authors. And my intent when I created it was not to make a profit. I didn't go in with that idea. It was just to build a community. So I think I took a different approach. And with that approach that I took, the community, it just grew. It grew big. So now when you look at us online, you'll see there's a lot of interaction on our page. It's like the community is there. It's easy for me to monetize and make money off the services that I provide, or if I wanted to create a service and provide, because I already have the community. So I think that's important. I think a lot of times people, they say, which should come first, the chicken or the egg or the chicken. Sometimes you have to create the platform first and then the product or service, that you believe your platform can benefit from. Like build the audience first. Like there's a slogan that says, if you build it, then they will come. Yeah, that can be true, but I would feel like taking that approach, you got to have a lot of confidence in your product or service. I'm talking about super confidence in your product or service to take that approach. But, I think that I even tell authors this all the time. Like, I think that it's better to kind of build up an audience, kind of get people interested. And once you feel like, okay, you kind of got enough engagement, then release the book. Then release it to the people and see how it works. But if you just, write a book, you got this awesome idea for a book, right? And you publish it and you release it. Yet, good and well, you have no kind of engagement on social media. What make you think that people are just going to jump and automatically buy your book? It don't really happen that way. I'm sorry, but it doesn't really happen that way unless you're lucky. You might, who knows? You might just release that book at the right place and the right time and some magic happens and boom, who knows? Become a bestseller. But we're talking about likelihood and probability and chances, and it's a small chance that that's going to happen that way. So you have to really think realistically and, think smart about it. I'm trying to catch up with what you guys are saying. So we're all losing trust in everyone and everything. Hard to know the real deal these days. That's true. I need my food stamps. My fixed disability income is not exactly. You have people who are, disabled. I work with adults with intellectual disabilities. So they receive assistance from the government. And that's a whole nother thing right there. It kind of ties, and I want to catch up with you guys in the comments, but I have to say this. Being that I work with adults with intellectual disabilities, they do receive government assistance. They receive SSI and, in California, there's this thing called the Regional Center. So the Regional Center provides funding to programs that support adults with disabilities. And they have this goal. The Regional Center in California has it's a beautiful, great idea, right? That they want to see Regional Center clients, which is a lot of them, across California, whether they have an intellectual disability, a developmental disability, some kind of disability that they have that qualifies them for assistance. But they want to see these people become fully functioning, employed citizens. So they telling the disabled people the same thing they telling poor people. Go out there and get a job. You need to go out there and get a job. We expect you to be working, to be gainfully employed, and to make money. You should not be, they feel like the government is saying that they're tired of sending money to these programs. One of the programs that I even work for right now as an intern psychologist, they say they're tired of sending money to these programs because it's a lot of money. We're talking about millions of dollars are funneled out to these programs to assist people with disabilities. And they're like, we tired of it. These people need to go out and get jobs. And they put the burden and responsibility on treatment providers to somehow get these people to a point where they were once dependent adults to become independent adults. Now, that problem there is that's a huge task to try to conquer. We're talking about people who this is their whole way of life. They have not been exposed to a lot of things that you and I have been exposed to. A lot of them don't even know how to read, write, count money. I was just working with one client, a couple of minutes ago before I started the video, trying to teach her, she's an adult, trying to teach her how to count money, but they expect them to go out there and get a job. We're talking about not only that, because I think they kind of forget that not only are these adults disabled physically or with intellectual disabilities, but a lot of them have mental illness, so they have these co-occurring diagnoses that it doesn't make any sense. I'm talking about people with schizophrenia. I'm working with adults with autism, with delusional disorders, bipolar, major depressive disorder, You know, people don't even want to get out of bed sometimes in the morning. And they saying that they need to be out there working. And that's what the government says about people with disabilities. That includes white people, because where I work at, the majority of the population is white. I think it's probably one black client, and we got 30 clients here, and it's like one black client. So when you think about the disabled population, it's a lot of white people. And it's like, so it's not that, they just don't care about black people, so they want to cut food stamps. They just doing this because I think they're not really thinking it out. They're not thinking it out. And then we have a different man in charge of our country called Donald Trump. He comes from a wealthy background. So he's speaking about this issue because he's speaking about it from a perspective, that's what he knows. He knows wealth. He can identify with the poor people. You get what I'm saying? So when he go out and say he got this plan to cut food stamps, and people are like, wait a minute, what is he doing? This man is only doing what he's been taught. Like a person is born into wealth where you inherited a certain amount of money. I think I remember looking at a documentary for Donald Trump, and it said that, his father gave him a sizable amount of money to launch his corporation, because they were in real estate, and gave Donald Trump a lot of money. And that's how he become this multi-billion-dollar person who own all these properties across the country. He's into the real estate business, essentially. He has a lot of properties. But he started out because his father gave him an inheritance. It was like a sizable amount, like maybe a couple $1,000,000 to get him started. So that's what he knows. So he's like, okay, if I grew up like this, my parents, they looked out for me. What's wrong with everybody else? He's not thinking about it. He's not thinking it through. Let me try to continue reading your comments. So we've had a lot of bombings that been happening out here in Austin. So school-related bombings, people bringing bombs to schools, or in what context, William? Sorry for being late to read your comments, but I had to get that off my chest. It's been all over national news that's been happening out here in Austin and all over CNN. Okay, that's another thing, y'all. Sorry, I don't watch the news. I am on social media. I have a heavy presence on social media, so I feel like if something is very significant, I'm going to find out about it on social media, because y'all know everything that makes television news also makes social media news too. So surprised I haven't really heard about that. And so I'm about to release, and I have found out must already have an audience. Nobody will support you. Yeah, you got to get that audience, man. You got to build that audience up. When you get that, when you feel like you got a good, strong, because it really is about market share. And this is kind of going into business terminology. But, I mean, if you got a good share, if you feel like you got a good handle on a certain section of the market, you good. You can create any product or service, and guess what? Your people going to buy it, because you already kind of got that engagement going with your audience. You got to have that first. The disabled community is suffering a lot, man. I ain't realize it, because this, like I said, this is my first. The placement where I work at now is my first time working with adults with intellectual. I never worked with the disabled population before, so this is new to me, and it's like, it's kind of sad because, of course I'm African American, and on one hand, you can kind of look at the African American community as a disabled population, because it's like our race creates a disability for us, not that we created it, but it's like society putting these labels on African Americans, saying we lazy, we poor, we this, we that, so how do you think people outside of our community is going to look at us and perceive us? How you think employers are going to look at African Americans if you got in the media images of black people acting retarded and acting dumb, and these messages saying we dirty, and y'all know the messages that's been put out there by African Americans. I don't even have to go into detail about it. And if you have these stereotypes that exist about African Americans, like they do with the disability population, who the hell gonna hire that? Employer gonna hire no disabled person. They're like, no, they ain't coming in here limping. They ain't coming in here drooling out their mouth. They ain't. I'm just telling to y'all real and raw. You gotta keep it real. I fear for my son's Future, he has autism and the system isn't set up to support him. That's why I work. That's what I'm saying. You have organizations that they do advocate and fight for individuals who have disabilities, mental disabilities included. People forget about mental disability. They think about, physical disabilities and being in a wheelchair. People forget about mental disability. Sometimes you have comorbid disabilities where you have more than one existing together. So I feel like we live in a messed up society. It's like if you're not normal, if you're not a part of the higher echelon, group of people who got money and who are fully functioning and they're just perfect and nothing wrong with them, they look at you like, child, they don't really care. It's sad, That's why we have to come together, and that's why there are organizations that are fighting for our cause, because the government don't care about something until it becomes a major problem. There's a huge outcry from the people who live in this country. It has to be a significant amount of people. That's what they say is power in numbers to get the government's attention. They'll be like, okay, let's try to do something about it. We'll see what we can do about it. I can imagine hell before a food stamp program came out, people were dying of hunger because they couldn't, they didn't have the money to afford food. It's crazy. Like she said, she feared for her own son's, future because how the system is set up. We are beautiful people, period. It's about humanity. At the end of the day, it should be about humanity. It should be about, what's right for human beings. We should be able to see and look into another person and identify with them. Whether you have $50 million in your bank account, you should be able to look at a person who don't have nothing in their bank account and say, that's a human being. That person deserves to eat. It's more, I feel like sometimes we try to make this issue as simple as go get a job. That's a simplified approach to examining this issue. But if only it was that simple, y'all. If only the problem was that simple. It's not that simple. If it was that simple, more black people would just go get a job. I mean, if it really was that simple. But we know it's not that simple, y'all. I mean, I wrote my book, The American Dreamer. I was inspired to write that book because of my struggle, and just facing this. It was a surprise to me. Like, I literally was shocked to see how difficult it was for me to find a job with a bachelor's degree. And I was young. Not old, I was young, fresh. Because that's what I was taught. They say when you're young, you're educated, they want to hire you right away, right? Employees, they're going to be trying to get you, That's why you got to go to school. They keep banging into people, hey, go to school, get your education, right? And do it young because that's the ones that employers want. They don't want people who are old and losing their memory and having trouble with their sight or what they're hearing. They want people who are still young, still vibrant, they got their eyesight, everything is functioning well in their body, they able-bodied, they good to go. I went to school when I was young. I graduated with my bachelor's degree in psychology from Florida State University at age of 22. And I still had issues finding a job. I mean, when I graduated with that degree, I didn't have an issue finding a job right after because I did get hired. Actually, I had something lined up. But it was something that happened where it's a series of events that happened. And after that, it's like I had issues finding a job and I had a degree. You get what I'm saying? Now, at this point, I haven't really tried to look for a job because I'm in school working towards a PhD. And that is my job. That's a full-time job. So that's occupying most of my time. But I even tell my coworker all the time, she's also working towards her PhD. And she's like, we have this conversation all the time, how when we get our degree and we become doctors, that our plan is not to be trying to look for no job. We do have to complete a certain number of hours under the supervision of a licensed psychologist after we get our degree. But outside of that, the goal isn't to look for a job, because I feel like when you have a job, just as easy as you got the job, it can be taken away from you. And you know who controls the jobs. I mean, let's just keep it real. Look at the corporations and how many corporations, I'm talking about major corporations that got money, are owned by white people. It's not owned by black people. So you look at, who runs it. I mean, it's they shit. So if it's something that ain't owned by black people, it's owned by them. It's theirs. I mean, you can't really make and force a person to give you something that's not yours to begin with. It's theirs. I made a video about this before. It's like that's their jobs. That's how I look at it. No matter what company it is, if it's a white person who own it, that's their shit. That's how I look at it. So I can't expect, even though I may be very well qualified, I'm able-bodied, I can do the job, I'm going to show up to work every day, I have a good attitude about it, I can have all these things that's right, that's in place, but that don't mean that I'm guaranteed a job. That don't mean they're going to hire me. It has nothing to do with, who's the most competitive. Like they'll say, this is a very competitive job, So if you didn't get the job, then obviously somebody who was more competitive than you secured the placement. And a lot of times it ain't even about, who has, it's not even about that. A lot of times it's about who they think is the best candidate. And it's a bias. That's the reason for my study, y'all. Y'all know, y'all been following me, know that I'm right in the middle, I'm in the middle right now of collecting data for my research study on implicit racial bias. Like that is one of my biggest focuses, as a budding psychologist, is to focus on racial bias because there's so much of it. And people kind of undermine the significance of racial bias, especially when it comes to hiring practices. But it exists. Employers know it exists. They know that they hire. I mean, just keep it real. People hire people who not only look like them, who think like them, who talk like them. It ain't got shit to do with, how well a person can do the job or looking at a person's resume and experience. A lot of times it ain't got nothing to do with that because in that case, we all got experience. We all got skills and talents that we can put on the resume and make ourselves stand out. So it ain't got nothing to do with that. A lot of times it goes down to your name. You got employers that check credit score, so this thing is systemic. If you are already born into poverty and you don't have no freaking credit, or your credit is bad because you just ain't got no money, you even took out lines of credit and wasn't able to pay the bills back because you don't have any income, then yes, you're going to have messed up credit. That fucked up credit score is going to keep you from being able to get a job because the employer is going to run your credit and they're going to say, this person got a low credit score. You don't even necessarily got to have bad credit, just have no credit. Be like, based on your credit score, we don't think that you are a good candidate. And you can have a person, chances are, from a different race, whether they Asian or Latino or white, their credit score going to be higher. Everything else is equal. And you don't even got to be equal. You can actually have better credentials, more experience than them, more to bring to the table than the other candidates that who you're going up against a job for, but they will hire somebody else just because they got a higher credit score. Even take the credit score out of there and just look at everything else is all equal except for, you black. They will give somebody else a position. You'll have a black man. And I hate to put it this way, but I see this myself. This is the truth. You have a black man. Let's take two black men, right? Two black men. Same education level. Both of them, let's say they got master's degrees. Both of them got the same amount of experience, years of experience in a certain given field. But guess who? They only got one. They only can hire one. Guess who gonna get that job? And the only difference between these two black men is their sexual preference. So one black man is gay, the other black man is straight. Guess who gonna get the job? The gay one. The gay man is gonna get the job. Because we live in a different society nowadays. We know back in the day, it was kind of frowned upon to be a homosexual. But now it's like the end thing to do. They got a movement. We know this. Y'all not sleep, aloof to the fact that there's an LGBT movement that's very powerful. And so that's the end thing now. So people will hire the gay black man as opposed to the I'm trying to think of a good word, a good word. But I'm just have to be straightforward. Let's say hire a straight, strong, conscious pro-black man. They're not hiring him because they look at it like that's going to be problems. A gay black man, a lot of them anyway. Not to say this is like all gay black men, but I mean, a lot of gay black men are kind of feminine. They're more submissive. That's who an employer want. They don't want no assertive black man up in there telling them what to do or thinking he know more than them. No. I have to go now, but I'm glad to have joined you on this. I'll catch the rest on the replay. You are wonderful. Keep up the good work. Thank you, Kashunda. Come back and finish watching this. I gotta go too. Now that you say that, I gotta go catch this bus, go head back to Hollywood. But thanks for speaking this truth for us to hear. I like to talk more when you have time. Have a great one. Thank you so much, Kashanda. You too. Have a great day. But I felt a need to do this topic because I've been seeing these posts on social media, and it's like people are making memes about it, kind of making jokes, making light of the situation or whatever. And then you got some people, they really offended by it. They're like, wait a minute, this is not funny. It's not a laughing matter. The fact that Donald Trump is talking about cutting food stamps, and some people say he already did in certain states. I mean, people have to realize that, when they put out an order and when laws are passed, like when a bill becomes a law, it can take effect nationwide at the same time, that's like a federal law, or it can take place state by state whenever the state itself decides to implement that particular law. So they can pass a bill into law and say, okay, this is legal federally or nationwide. But certain states, they may not implement that law later on to down the road, So it's up to each individual state. People have to realize that. Yes, we are one nation, as I say, under God, one nation. But every single state has within them the liberty to create their own laws and to implement their own laws and enforce their laws how they see fit. So it could be legal in one state and another state can still be waiting for them to implement the law. I've seen videos where one lady says she already got her case. He's supposed to send out these cases. And in place of getting the money, right, on the card, he's supposed to replace the money with these packages, these food packages. It's like a big ass box full of frozen food that supposedly one of the distributors of the food is supposed to be this place called Blue Apron. Now, I have heard of the company called Blue Apron because you have a lot of YouTubers who promote for them. So you have YouTubers, there's this thing called sponsorship where YouTubers can get paid to promote products or services for companies. As long as they do a video about their product or service, or it's like product placement essentially, right? And they talk about it and say, oh, how good it is, da, 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 da. So you have a lot of YouTubers who've already actually done testimonials for this company called Blue Apron that supposedly Donald Trump is supposed to be using to scale back on food stamps, in replace of food stamps. I don't know really how true that is. I've heard that that's not really true, but I mean, I feel that, a person has already made a video about it and saying that this is what they're getting. It's sad either way because we're talking about frozen foods. Anybody know frozen foods? That's not the best food, Food that's already like pre-cooked and all you gotta do is put it in the oven. Basically, you're reheating it because it's already pre-cooked. It's frozen. It's not healthy, So it boils down to, people are concerned about their health, and considering that there's all this word going around, but people still have their money. They still have their food stamps. I would recommend for people who are on food stamps and there's a rumor going around that Donald Trump is going to scale back, then take that. Just take it use it to your advantage, because how I look at it, they can just stop it, cold turkey and not even give out a warning. So the fact that they're warning people ahead of time, I think that's a good thing. It's good that you're getting the warning about that and just take that warning and prepare yourself in any way possible that you can. We know food costs a lot of money. I can attest to that. Like living in LA, I don't even want to calculate how much money I spend on food. And that's just for one individual person. It's like, Lord, if If I was to have kids, it's like, dang, I might end up on food stamps messing around because food costs a lot of money. The cost of food has gone up and it's not going down, it's continuing to rise. So I feel like if anything, when we have these situations like this, like that should motivate the Black community to come together, to really unite, to come together and find ways where we can be self-sufficient, where we don't have to depend. Wouldn't it be nice if Black people did not have to depend on the government for survival, where we had our own means to survive that were built in within our communities that we can survive? I feel like Black people, we have so much wealth and resources. We can share this within our community. We know somehow we get money. Like, I think it's a mystery, sometimes it's like how Black people get money to do X, Y, and Z in terms of buying video games and buying weave. Like, weave costs money. Makeup that women buy for their face, like that shit add up. But they don't have money for, A, B, and C. It's like, how can that be? So sometimes I think it's just about redistributing, our money and making sure that, okay, we have our basic needs met, because that's most important. You got to have food. That's at the top of the list. Like I said, you can live without shelter, but you can't survive without food. So you got to have food and water. That's at the top of the list, and then of course shelter, and healthcare is important, making sure that you are healthy and you're taken care of medically. I mean, we gotta just get our priorities in straight, but I feel like we need to stop the judging too, because that's not helping. I feel like it's enough, criticism coming down from white people telling us, we ain't shit and this and that. I don't even want to repeat the things that white people have said about Black people. We already get enough of that from white people. So I just want to encourage Black people. Let's just stop coming down on each other and saying these negative things. Black people need to stop being lazy and this. That's not the case. Black people, we hard. If anything, we're hardworking people. But I would say, if anything, Black people, we probably just, a lot of us just oppressed, depressed, oppressed, just tired. It's not lazy. So let's redefine that term. Laziness. It's not that, It's sometimes Black people we're just tired, and it can be intergenerational. We're not too far removed from slavery, you guys. Let's not forget. Please let's not forget. Black people have gone through a lot. The whole Jim Crow laws and the black codes, and we've been through a lot. Black people, the fact that we're still breathing, we're still fighting to see another day, and Black people have not picked up their guns and just start going crazy on the system. Because we ain't did that. Think about it now. Like, out of all the shit Black people have been through in this country, you would think there would be some kind of revolt, some kind of war, but Black people really start to pick up their guns and start to go out and start to really get, revenge or their justice, take justice into their own hands. But you ain't seen, when the last time you seen that? You haven't seen that. So let's give Black people, some support, the benefit of the doubt, to say, okay, no, these are good people. It's just that we need more opportunities. If there were more opportunities and more education and more support and more people saying positive things about Black people, because a lot of us are descendants of slaves, and a lot of things have been passed down from generation to generation, so yes, the issue is very complicated. I'm going to have to really go ahead and end this video because there's more to say about this issue, but I feel like a lot of stuff, I think people, it's easy to say, oh, it's because Black people are lazy, but it's like, no, it's a lot more to that equation than a Black person just being lazy. I think a lot of times Black people operate out of fear too. A lot of things that we choose not to do that we maybe should do is because of fear of the unknown. So just like, what the heck? Why even go out there look for a job if you think that they ain't gonna give you the job anyway? You doubt you're going to get a job anyway. Yes, it's a lot. But I'm going to end this video because I got to go home, you guys. But thank you guys for tuning in. Feel free to continue the discussion below. And It's hard out here, you guys. It's hard. My heart goes out to every single African American who is dependent upon food stamps, to survive. I feel like none of us can't be talking because a lot of us just one paycheck away from being homeless. So who are you to look down on the next black person because they on food stamps? Because that's how they learn to survive, because they're being resourceful. And I find it very interesting how when black people are on government aid, they want to call it welfare. When white people use government money, it's subsidy. They give like a fancy name, subsidized, It's sophisticated. It's still fucking government. It's still welfare. You think any money coming from the government is welfare. It's a government program. Um, think about financial aid. Think about student loans. That could be considered welfare. It's money coming from the government to fund a certain program. The program is education in this case. In the other case, it's food stamps. It's a SNAP. Either way, I think when you think about it, all Americans are on welfare. We all get some kind of government subsidies in some way, shape, or form. So let's not point fingers at people, and let's be more open-minded about this discussion when we talk about black people having to depend upon a system, for assistance and support, because I don't like the point fingers and judging and stuff like that. We all have to survive. We all have to find a way to make it through this life that we've been given, this short period of time that we are on this earth. We all have to find our best way to do it. And for some people, it is relying on the government. That's where their trust is, and that's where their reliability has, been set. So if people put their faith and trust in the government, and the government has been reliable in taking care of them and giving them their disbursement on the 1st and the 15th or wherever they get it, then so freaking what? It's help. It's assistance. Hell, speaking of that, I might try to go out there and try to find me how I can get some more assistance, because we all can benefit from extra money. Who cannot? I mean, we all can benefit from a food stamp card. The way food prices are nowadays, even the so-called wealthy and the middle class. So it's just extra help. It's extra assistance, So let's stop the finger pointing and blaming and all of that, on black people, because we carry enough on our shoulders as it is, and we just got enough going on as it is, so we don't need that extra negativity in our life, Thank you guys for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys later. I gotta go. All right. Take it easy, guys. Bye.